mentioned that he's actually been around for a little while, but it's just really on the lately he's been on the up and up. And I remember being like, oh, he's got a couple of really strong timings. That's great. But as far as his overall approach to StarCraft, his mechanics, I was feeling a little bit lacking, but that has seemingly very much improved in the last year, and hopefully it will continue to improve, and we might see an emergence of Zoun, or alternatively, we might see the comeback of Dark thanks to TSL. He was super good in the last season. Let's see what he can do this season as we spawn in the top right of 2,000 atmospheres. On top of this player, it is the Blue Zerg, Dark. You got this one, Marcel?
Oh, I was waiting for you. I'm like, this is a bit of a chicken game here, right? In the bottom left spawning as the red Protoss player playing for Team Alpha X. It is Zoun. And it's the man I'm so in love with. Oh, that was a little bit awkward. I even tapped down to make sure I wasn't muted or closed like my Discord entirely. I was like, oh, this is a long pause here, Zombie Grub. That all at the start. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Mm-hmm. No, but okay, Zoun, let me tell you why I think Zoun is so great. Okay, this guy doesn't mess around. He tends to have... He actually reminds me a bit of Neep. So people that don't know, Neep used to have this massive document where he basically have one of them reaction trees, you know? You'd go like, okay, if I scout this, I do that. If I see that, I do this. And he'd have that for different build orders. And when I watch Zoun play, I always feel the exact same way. It feels like he has a response for everything. And he just is such a systematic thinker where he has these little things prepared for absolutely everything that his opponent can throw for him. He knows what his reactions are. He reacts very consistently with those, but also very confident in those reactions. So he doesn't really second guess himself very much. And as a Protoss player, that I think is one of the most important things that you can do, is that you don't second guess yourself. You don't doubt your own calls, because then you can hit very hard. And he's opening up here with a warp gate and a depth immediately, which most likely indicates that he's going to be playing his 3-gate or his 4-gate glaive build.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say that, he throws out a Stargate. Why do I live?
I was gonna say there is a moment in time where this was, 100%. The warp gate comes out first. Okay, it's not a Stargate, and then I feel like it was especially that IM kind of Vitae finals between Zest and Rogue, where it was like, okay, you can't trust that anymore, and Rogue didn't trust it. He just, literally busted Zest 4 times in a row. But anyways, like, it can be a bit tricky, and certainly that's also been something that Zoun has going for him, is that he's been able to get inside Dark's head a little bit. Like, the GSL best of 5, Zoun was able to make a comeback against, one of the world's, supposedly best players, and that probably didn't feel so great for Dark. And then also showed a handling of the Queen all-in that wasn't supposed to be so, I don't know if perfect's the right word, but so good. And I feel like since then, Dark's not uncomfortable per se, but is a little more uncomfortable against this guy than I think he would have initially been, right? Looking at Zoun for that GSL bracket, oh, it's going to be fine, it's going to be easy. Complete turnaround with the loss there, as well as the next 2 losses in the, I believe, the next series, right? So it's a bit tricky with the Stargate coming out. Let's see if Dark is going to have the proper preparation.
Yeah, and we saw Dark get... One of the things Dark does is that he gets slightly faster link speed than Samzerg, like 4 or 5 seconds, and that actually allowed him to get this adapter. I think he pulls into gas to do that rather than just rally into gas. And he doesn't pull out of gas either until he starts his speed. So that's why he managed to get the adapt. We're seeing an Oracle first rather than Void Ray first. So Zoun is saying, hey, you can scout me, but I'm going to be able to go across the map and do a little bit of damage. However, that does leave the opportunity open for the opponent to scout it, and that usually means that something like a Twilight follow-up is a lot less likely. So I wouldn't be completely surprised if we're going to see something like a second Stargate being added on here relatively quickly, especially because we're not seeing a 3rd Stargate unit being produced yet either. Yep, there we go. 2nd Stargate goes down, double gas is going down as well. And the way that Zoun likes to play this specific setup is that he goes into a bunch of Void Rays, then gets Charge Archon, and then goes into double Robo Disruptor. So it's kind of the reverse of what we've seen a lot. A lot of players like to get those fast Disruptors out for the safety against the Queen Walk, but Zoun says, no, I actually feel safe opening Forged Twilight and then going into Disruptor to go into some type of 3.5 base push with 4 or 5 Disruptors, and I hope to kill you before Hive units are out.
Couple of adepts get in, kill a couple of drones. The Oracle also was able to swoop in kind of out of the normal pathway to kill a few as well. Dark had anticipated it coming from the right. It didn't. Regardless of the way the Oracle was going to come in, it was pretty much guaranteed to see that it was a faster layer here. So Dark showed a variety of styles against Zoun in their, let's do some quick math, 6 + 5, 11 games that they've played recently. And, Ling Hydra was certainly one of them, and even a Queen attack with it as well, if I remember correctly. So I feel like that's actually something that Zoun's really got to be paying attention to, is like, how likely is this going to be a Queen march across the map? Or are we actually going to go toe-to-toe in that macro game? Because while they had plenty of macro games, they were often based off of Zoun defending against Dark, and then Dark trying to kind of make up and actually play the rest of the game out.
Yeah, it felt like very often that, the Dark kind of just got in a crappy spot, and then Zoun was like, oh, let me finish you, and then it still got kind of close. But I mean, just staying alive against Dark is something that people have been struggling with for the past 10 years. So it's not like it's an easy thing to do. We see that Zoun is scouting very hard for that 4th base, and he isn't finding it actually. And that's because, big surprise, Dark doesn't have a 4th base yet. You see the decisiveness in this scouting out of Zoun as well. He checked the right side and flies with his 3 Void Rays to the left. He's like, hey, wait a second, there's no 4th base, and he immediately goes back home. And now it's important to see what type of reaction will he pull out of his sleeve. Did he lose that Oracle? No, he recalled it. Huh? Interesting.
I mean, so far, a favorable game for Zoun. He's gotten a few drones in exchange for just a couple of adepts. But Dark is actually getting to a place that he's, we're familiar him getting to, that is Roach Hydra, just in a bit of a different way than I expected. Delaying that +1 missile more than he has in previous games, adding on the Hydralisks first, and then adding on the Roach Horn as well, which is also, it can be a bit dangerous, but I think, what is inevitably going to happen is that Dark is going to kind of key into what Zoun plays like. And so far, Zoun, aside from his Resident Glaives opener, doesn't exactly, throw out the 2-base charge lot all in or something really old and kind of bad unless it's a surprise. So Dark's going to be able to get away with that. He is finally getting that +1 missile. His 4th base is finally coming down, which Zoun did see. So we might have actually a bit of a poke here from Zoun with that War Prism on the way. Storm +1 finishing up. The rest of his gateways is going to be a total of 12 gateways with those finishing up.
What do you make of that late 4th base out of Dark and now droning that up? Like, it just seems like it's almost a minute and a half later, and it feels like these early Hydras didn't do much for him. And now we actually have Zoun attacking into this, which also is slightly surprising to me. He saw the late 4th base. If I was Zoun, I'd be expecting a push in, and I mean, Dark is only on 74 workers.
It seems out of order, right? Like the order of operations here was a little odd, but now we do have a sizable chunk of Hydras that seems good as long as they're dodging out the storms and running away from those zealots. The Queens get massacred. The storms looks like they're finally depleted, have done a solid job against the Hydras, and now it's usually up to the charge lots to actually kill them, get that last swipe. But with the Roaches reinforcing as well, pretty much in the nick of time, we actually have Dark holding very, very well. And this is actually reminiscent of one of their games where Dark kind of used all of his Ling Baneling at the time to clear out that first wave of Zealots and then got kind of overconfident. And then the next wave of Zealots came in. If Zoun had 12 more Zealots before the Roaches came out, a lot of these weak Hydras are dead. We might have a snowball effect because then the Void Rays take out the Roaches, right? But instead, it came out at the exact right time. Dark now initiating a counterattack. He's on a fairly healthy economy and he wants to end it here. He knows he took a good fight. And Zoun is now depending on a couple of storms, if he's got them, maybe some shield batteries, trying desperately to chrono out that Immortal. Can he actually hold here? Are the storms ready to go? They are. 4 storms ready. But Dark's got quite a healthy supply, and he has the ability to now micro against it. How much is he going to push this? Apparently, he's going to be pretty careful about this push, but he really thinks he has an opportunity. Kill 7X Core, wants to get that lone Immortal, but not quite able to grab it. Oh, well,
yeah, super battery already used as well. A couple more storms are coming in, and this round might actually prove kind of fatal for this attack for Dark. On the other hand, more Hydras are reinforcing, so these Voice Rays won't be enough either just by themselves. 166 supply against 85, 91 army supply against 21, and I think Zoun needs to tap out. He agrees with me, as game number 1 will be going to TPG Dark.
Yeah. That was, I was starting to kind of believe like maybe Zoun is going to be able to force a split decision from Dark to the point where Dark miscalculated and pushes in when he shouldn't or pulls back when he shouldn't. But Dark knows when there's a killing blow. That's one thing that Dark absolutely has, and that's a killer instinct. And he just went for it. And yes, Zoun could not hold, not enough immortals, not enough shield batteries. And, hitting him in one of the weakest places as well, that natural didn't have a lot protecting it.
Right. I'm kind of thinking of what Zoun saw and how he responded to that. So Zoun sees a very late fourth base. He sees his opponent is rushing out Hydras with relatively poor upgrades for a longer amount of time as well. Sees no gases on the fourth and almost no drone count. I mean, it was 74 workers. That is practically still 3-base saturation. And 3-base versus 3-base, Roach Hydra versus any Protoss comp, including a Storm or AoE, is gonna be pretty good for Protoss, in my opinion. So I don't quite understand why he attacked straight into that. If the eco is even, his tech is better, and he's the one that's army size and his army comp is increasing in strength. It felt like Dark was on a timer, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to eventually sum this up, like the way that Dark had played that out kind of felt like the wrong order of things for someone who was going to the later game, was macroing, and then it was like, oh, okay, no, this is a timer thing. Okay, so Zoun waits it out, and then Zoun didn't, which might indicate that Zoun, he might actually have an idea of how to beat Dark that he's a little stuck on, like maybe a little rigid to start things off in this best of 5, and he's going to have to remind himself that Dark is capable of doing basically anything, any composition, any type of dedicated attack, let's call it, and yes, a macro game, sure, in one of these best of 5s, and he's going to have to maybe take that in consideration and not just do the +1 push with Storm.
Right. And another thing that might be interesting to note is that this is, I think, the first tournament where I've seen Zoun really walk away from his double robo disruptor style that he so much liked. And in this case, I think it actually would have been really nice to have a couple of disruptors. Of course, Storm isn't bad against Hydra either, but I wouldn't have minded his old school disruptor style, old school, the style he was playing a week and a half ago. I'm not sure if we can quite call that old school yet, but it's interesting to see that he did switch it up. So he does have things specifically prepared. And as we're heading into game number 2, in the bottom left, spawning as the red Protoss player playing for Team Alpha X, we'll see what he's gonna show us this game around. It is, of course, Zoun.
And in the top right, as the blue Zerg for DPG, up 1, he is Dark.
I was afraid you're gonna wait me out again.
I was like, it's a beautiful start to our casting, partnership to play some Caster Chicken. That's how we initiate you guys. But no, I was just waiting for the observer. And plus, I'm a little used to the sound effects of DreamHack going on. I don't know if you've noticed that we sometimes have to wait quite a few seconds before talking.
Yeah, for sure. Once again, we have Zoun with a quick little scout here, gonna deny the hatchery, but oh, look at that move! Oh, that's so sick. This is great because it's so dumb, and I love this type of stuff. Because if this doesn't work, his hatchery is delayed by like 15 seconds, and he's gonna get supply blocked because his hatchery isn't done yet. He won't be able to start his next queen. He needs to build like a freaking 19 overlord. Like, it completely ruins your build, which is why I love that move so much. It's so ballsy, and sure, there is some profit, and like there is some value in it. But I'm not even sure how much better it really is to have like a 10-second or like a 6-second late natural rather than having like an on-time third base. I don't think the difference is actually that big. So I love this type of play. That's such a big mental move as well. Like, Dark is just so ballsy, and I don't know how he does it. It's like he's never afraid of anything, and now he just takes a 20 hatch as well. Yeah, this is absolutely great to see. He just sends out the drone, takes the other base if it gets blocked. Like, he is just so cool. And that's completely fine to mention as well. He's just cool.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely winning the coolness battle here. And he's up 1-0, so he's also winning the skill battle so far. Good start for the Korean Zerg.
Yeah, he's the coolest. He goes to the chillest places, hangs out with the coolest people, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Dark he's a unique player. First of all, a preference for roaches more than any other Zerg, which I think in the past would have actually made him a boring player, but it's Dark, so it's actually still very exciting. And then, of course, there's the whole BMing the foreigner scene that he kind of likes to do. He's willing to play the game of charisma right on stage. So everyone likes Dark, but it's also seen in his play. And Zoun is well aware of all these things. He did get the scout, the follow-up scout, and probably just thinking the same thing you are, which like, damn, this guy's ballsy.
Yeah, it's so great to watch this. And I know you're gonna be triggered as well if you lose game 1 like that, and then this happens in game number 2. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe this guy. It's just so good. I love to see it. Metabolic Boost is gonna finish. See how fast that finishes, huh? 320. Even though he got the natural down this time, he really likes his quick speed. He doesn't want to get bothered by too early adapts. And that costs him a little bit in economy, because don't forget, whenever you're getting earlier gas and denying yourself minerals, that hurts your economy, because the only way you can increase your economy is by spending minerals, right? Queens, hatcheries, drones, they only cost minerals. Nothing that increases your economy costs gas. So the faster you get your gas, the more you cut minerals, the worse it tends to be for your economy. Now, we're talking about tiny differences here. Of course, it's going to be like a 5-6 second difference. It might be like 20 or 25 minerals, but it is still a decision that he makes very consistently in favor of safety against these two early adapts. Oracle gets a single kill, or well, got 2 kills. Did he get that tumor? I think he did get that tumor, right?
Yeah, with the adept, and then he had an Oracle. This is interesting. So Dark, I think, is even slightly faster on his lair this game by like 5 seconds. As well as Dark was actually able to push away that Oracle. So it's really difficult to stop the Oracle from actually getting a full scout on hatcheries and thus lair tech, right? Like, you can hide a Spire behind a mineral line a lot of the time, sure, but usually the Oracle's supposed to be able to see hatchery count and maybe a lair timing. But with the way that Oracle swooped in, Dark has actually stopped it from seeing the lair itself, which I mean, Zoun is missing information, and while that was not necessarily a problem last game for the first 75% of it, it felt like it was missing maybe for the latter 25% when he pushed the issue on the attack. And that's why I'm a little worried. I mean, and Dark doing the same thing as last game, or very similar to it. He won with that last game. Now we get to see, does he get the scout? And then does he react differently? Because I think that's, he probably shouldn't have pushed the issue when he did.
Yeah. We're seeing a very old school build out of Zoun, by the way. He took his gases before the Nexus, and I think Dark scouted the timing as well, so he knows it's gas before Nexus, and he's going into 6-gate charged Archon. So it's going to be an old school Archon drop off of 2 Stargate units. Now, Charge is being researched as well, and wait, did Dark just see that prism? No, I don't think he did. Oh man, that was really, really close actually. That was very close, and the fact that he hasn't seen it yet is a little bit scary. There's still continued probe production. This isn't an 8-gate. There's going to be a transition into a forge, but if he gets like 2 full warpins in with Zealots, it's going to be like 12 Zealots with 2 Archons. Dark is going to need so many Hydras in order to fight this. And I think Dark is actually doing a 56 drone Hydra, and this is going to be a really silly game.
Yeah. Speaking of classic builds, we have Dark going for a build that was actually plaguing Protosses back when the upgrades were combined on the Hydralisk end. And even still, it can be very scary. Things are going to get weird, though, as I feel like if Dark was at home, then he cleans this up and then initiates a counter. But as it is, we have ourselves a little bit of a base race. Who is this going to favor? I'm really not sure. I mean, I feel like Zoun is going to get cleaned up on his 3rd base, that's for sure. Natural might be a little more in question, and Dark, of course, has to worry about his own bases. Queen's coming forward are trying to save that lair, but not enough transfuses. The lair goes down. The Archons are picked up. The Zealots tried to be recalled, and 3 of them do survive. A very funny situation where both of them are exchanging worker kills about evenly, and perhaps even base kills, because I'm pretty sure this 3rd base was supposed to go down, but Dark kind of pulled back. He really needs to get this kill, and I think he will. Yeah, I just don't see Zoun actually holding against it.
I actually think Zoun should keep his Archons on the other side of the map and just defend his natural for now. Oh, I love this. This is something you do against Terrans very often, is where you go in between the army and kind of the reinforcement line to stop the reinforcements. But these Archons at home also would be quite useful. Of course, he doesn't have a recall available anymore. Oh, be careful with your Archons there, Zoun. Don't want to be flying into Hydras right now. good revelation is going to help him out. But yeah, if he would have counterattacked with these 2 Archons in the prison, that could have been very helpful. Now he's trying to catch these Hydras while they're retreating. I'm not sure if he can just be on the map like this, though. Like, I mean, just because the Hydras are walking away doesn't mean they're not strong anymore. That's not quite how it works.
Yeah. And the upgrade they chose to go for first was the range as well, so be extra special careful with that Warp Prism. Can still add on the Hydralisk speed, even though the lair's done. The Hydralisk Den is still intact. I guess the lack of lair might influence... Oh, okay, I was like, there's not a GG, right? Nope, just a little bit of a pause. Did feel a little bit here and there. But yeah, with the Hydralisk Den done, that still opens up the option for a Lurker Den. So the lair is like an Overseer can't be made, or a +2 upgrade can't be made, but we actually see in this pause the intention to make a Lurker Den.
Wait, we do?
Yeah.
How do we see that?
If you look on the preview.
On the natural base.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. We actually do see that. That's crazy. I actually thought he was just gonna go again for another Hydra Link push. As yeah, that's there's no Evo yet here either, right? So
right.
This is going to be this is just going to be vanilla lurkers, no upgrades. I mean, no hive, that's for sure. I mean, it's not even a lair yet. So this is gonna take a while for these lurkers. Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna be a lurker push near the rocks, I guess. It's hard though. There's already 2 immortals, and there's not going to be a lot to tank for these lurkers. I'm really curious to see how Dark kind of envisions this game. Yeah. I'd love to go into his mind someday, just talk with him, just pick his brain on these situations, because the decisions he makes are very often the decisions. Let's put it like this: if he wouldn't win so much, people would be like, "Ah, this is some random idiot," you know. But whenever Dark plays them, all of a sudden that random idiot turns into one of the most successful StarCraft 2 players of all time, and it always looks kind of genius in the end. It's like, holy crap, like that's actually really cool. Like his playstyle is just so different from anything we usually see. So overly aggressive and seemingly random drone timings. It's very difficult to play against. And you know what the funny thing is that people kind of think of Dark as a very aggressive player, but his late game also is quite good. Like, it's not like he's a pushover in the late game. No, he's probably one of the best in the late game as well. Some solid pre-threading as well, even though this game has been pure chaos. So yeah, Dark is looking as Dark usually does, and that's well, I'm not quite sure what it is. Yeah, wild.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, if this guy didn't make, the final so often, he was just like a round of 32 player. Like no one's really studying this guy. But as soon as he, does this and then wins this series, and suddenly it's like, okay, why does this work? Why does it make so much sense? Still having some problems in the game by the looks of things, which is just too bad. But it looks like no pause asked, requested, and the game will continue and even come to a head as Zoun is prepared to go for an attack, perhaps faster than Dark might anticipate, but also coincidentally timed. 8 lurkers are going to finish, so it's actually a pretty solid number of lurkers and still a decent number of Link Hydra on top of that. I'm not sure if Zoun's really prepared to deal with lurkers. I don't believe he's seen it. He hasn't seen the lurker den, no observer over the army. Is there an observer with the army? Okay, there is now, but still, is he going to be prepared for this?
I'm not quite sure if Zoun needs to do this. I think it is. Is it possible into these lurkers? I mean, these lurkers have like no range right now, but attacking into lurkers is so scary. I feel like this is an almost analogous situation of last game, in which Zoun actually is creating a really good army. He has an insanely long timing window. He doesn't really need to do anything. I would just love if he clears a little bit of creep, he takes out that 4th base like he does right now, and then just kind of goes home and contains his opponent on 3 bases and doesn't really push into it. Pick off what you can pick off, but always do it for free. And then just, transition into air. This is beautiful play. This is complete textbook Zoun. He realizes, hey, ecos are going to be even. My army right now is better. I can keep map control with this army. I can deny my opponent's 4th base, and I'm just going to tech into something which he can't afford to counter. The only way Dark can possibly counter this is by playing a Lurker, Hydra, Viper, with perhaps Microbial Shroud Infestors. I mean, Dark just doesn't have the money to throw down 2 Spires and get Corruptors.
It was something that he was experimenting with, there was all that talk of like, is it actually a good spell? And kind of died down, honestly, but I'd be interested to see it again. And that's, we're seeing Zoun play a little bit less rigid than last game. Like, we know he's capable of actually adapting. It just didn't happen last game. It certainly is here. Definitely pushing an issue. The lots of zealots on the left side going to find all these queens with their transfuses now gone, but enough lurkers defending to the left. How about the lurkers on the right? Storms come down, injure them up, take away most of the lings, and there's still a couple more storms afterwards. The Archons are getting awfully low in that health, however, and there's still some lurkers left over. The zealots try to come in, but oh, look at that. The observer was sniped. Oh, at the last second. As it was, I think there were just too many lurkers anyways, but I don't think Zoun was anticipating that. Now is an awkward decision to make. Does he continue pushing in? He is indeed. An observer actually is around somewhere again, so maybe he was just out of place initially. And the lurkers, well, they're finally starting to get chopped down. The zealots might actually do it. The warp prism barely lives as Dark tries to go for the snipe. The lurkers are mostly all gone, but man, this turned into one dicey situation. This was super close, but Zoun is actually having to pull back.
Yeah, 5 lurkers were on the right side during this, by the way. Just defending the fort base, which I thought was a little bit interesting. Definitely would have been very useful in that fight. Dark right now is on higher supply, but his worker count is absolutely pathetic. He has no upgrades on the lurkers whatsoever. He's not going into Hive. Right now, the only thing that Dark can do is counterattack, and there we go. He picks up his lurkers burrowed from under the ground, and he actually has a crap ton of lurkers because he did keep those 5 from earlier that he didn't use in the first fight. Now he's just going to walk across the map. There's only a single carrier here, actually, and now all of a sudden this looks a little bit scary here for Zoun.
It does, yeah. Yeah, pretty important moment not to have any delay in lag. I was gonna say, I felt like what Zoun was gonna set up for, you kind of mentioned like a contain. I thought the zealots are going to threaten, with the army and just kind of be like, am I gonna go? Oh my god, and make sure that Dark wasn't capable of just picking everything up and going across the map and potentially finding Zoun mid transition with a choke on Oxide, obviously too. Sometimes difficult to get past, but by actually pulling the trigger like that, Zoun might have made a similar mistake to last game. And again, instead of just waiting it out and hoping that the economy just ends up too bad for Dark, he pushes the issue again. Now it's still a decent amount of Zerg, good amount of lurkers pushing in, and he's not quite ready to go with those carriers. 2 more about the pop. +2 is almost done, but yeah, this is a pretty pivotal moment. Dark is rightfully using the emoji here.
Yeah. So the thing here is that if I like the initial move in from Zoun because it's relatively non-committed. It's not like lurkers without any upgrades can chase you, and they're very easy to kind of disengage away from. So I like the initial thought. Throw down a couple of storms on some lurkers, clear even more creep, perhaps even threaten to go into that natural with a couple of zealots or your main army, while the rest is kind of zoning out these lurkers. I thought that was a really good idea. But then the big commitment, it is just a risk, and we now see that risk probably didn't really pay off. Zoun was in the very commanding lead. If he gets up to 3 carriers with +1 or 4 carriers with +1, I can't imagine a world in which Dark can ever win that game again. Like, it's just not possible. He's not on Hive. He doesn't have any upgrades. He doesn't have range upgrade. He doesn't have attack upgrades for his range units. Like, the Hydra just wouldn't be able to kill the carriers. It just would not be possible. So I feel like Zoun really just made himself a lot more vulnerable while it wasn't quite necessary. Now, of course, doesn't mean that he's dead here. He still has a super battery. I think he has 4 storms available. He has 1 carrier out, like you mentioned. There's 2 more carriers on the way. And his +2 is about to finish up. Something that he could consider, though, is perhaps giving up this 3rd base. If the position seems too difficult to engage in after the super battery kind of wears out, I think saving the probes here and just waiting for a higher carrier count still gives him a very viable game plan into a longer game. I mean, at this point, still, if he gets up to 4 or 5 carriers, what really does Dark have? I mean, he has 1,700 mineral income. There's no Hive. There's not going to be Vipers anytime soon. There's not going to be any upgrades for these Hydras either. So, what do you think about that? Should he just immediately give up this base, or kind of at least wear out the super battery?
I'm gonna say immediately give up the base, mostly based on the fact that there are some lurkers already entering through the choke. Like, if he still had control of the choke and he was like storming as a like a get away from here, I'd be like, yeah, maybe. But I feel like the Zerg army is already spilled over. But we'll see what his decision is. I do feel like maybe the past experiences from Zoun are proving to be a little I don't know what the word is, but like they actually haven't taught him necessarily the right way to play against Dark. I don't want to say any of his wins are flukes. It's not that extreme, but I do feel like in a lot of the games that Zoun was able to play, he was very mindful of straight up killing Dark. Like he also had a killer instinct, even though Dark is one of those guys who can play a very extended mid game and make those weird comebacks happen. So now he's like trying to do it again, and it's just not quite working. But I guess analysis time is over. We do see if Zoun's going to be prepared to give up this base or not. More Zerg is flowing through, more Lurkers specifically. The Storms have been used. A couple Lurkers starting to die to maybe some carrier focus fire, but there's like just enough Hydras to actually take out the Interceptors. So the shield battery is almost gone. More Lurkers come forward, but they are a bit clumped up. Zealots and Archons and Immortals come in with those Storms. 2 Lurkers are left over to that right side, but that's actually kind of it. More Hydras come through, but Zoun has plenty of reinforcements, and he might actually be totally fine. Oracle does get taken out. There's one Observer actually rallied in the middle, but the Lurker, the lone single Lurker, I mean, I don't think it's that much of an issue. It does go for some probe harassment, but Zoun was able to deal with that very effectively, much more effectively than I thought he would.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Just kind of stalled till he had +2, then morphed in some Archons. It was like, all right, time to fight, buddy. Let's see what you actually have. He still has 2 carriers joining up with this army as well. The army supply is very equal, and there is a single storm. And I think with a single storm, those Hydras become a lot worse. I mean, Dark already giving up this 4th base, which really was the only kind of semi-advantage he had, which is like a 10 drone lead. But yeah, it's just looking very, very dire for Dark right now.
Yeah, he's just going to micro his heart out with these Hydras that are unupgraded, by the way, just not even +1 missile. Against the +2 Archon, Immortal, Zealot. The carriers, I mean, the Interceptors really aren't adding very much. Those are actually getting taken out pretty quickly. And the concave of Hydras might be a little intimidating. And funnily enough, I feel like at the end of the day, Zoun did kind of give up the base. He gave up, some of the probes. The Lurker does end up killing the 3rd Nexus, but an awkward recall, leaving one Immortal behind. Yeah, it was still pretty good. But yeah, Zoun is back on 3 bases, but a very fresh 3rd base that is saturated right now.
Yeah, but I really felt like we were kind of hyping up for this game to end. At least in my head, I was like, well, this is going to be a push now, +2 against no upgrades. Then he just kind of engaged into Hydras again and again without any storms there. Now he's gonna go have another go. I still think that Zoun is in a fantastic position, but the resilience of Dark here is, it's impressive. I love it. I really do like it. He's trying to stay in, even though in my head this game was over 5 times already. He's gonna have another go at it. There's a couple of Lurkers. He's getting spores. He's trying to re-establish that 4th base. Zoun is doing the same thing on the other side of the map. 5 more Lurkers in production here, and Lurkers are good, but not great against these carriers, so he does need to be careful that he doesn't morph too many Hydras into Lurkers.
Right, yeah, he's going to need a decent number of Hydras to take out these Interceptors as fast as possible. Basically, preferably before the rest of the army really joins in. Like, that would be the best. But it looks like Zoun now with a lot of storms, it was what was kind of missing from his last push-in, is looking to injure the Lurkers, then jump on top of them. He's been able to do that pretty effectively the last couple of fights, especially if Dark is clumping them way too much. Here we have the Interceptors in a classic battle trying to snipe something. Being taken out by the Hydras does end up getting the cancel there, which every second that Dark doesn't have a 4th base is worse and worse. Because while 50 drones doesn't even saturate a 4th base, if it's, like a 10-minute 4th base, something like that, we're talking about a Zerg player who's been on the original 3 for 16 minutes. Like, things are starting to run out. He does need a new fresh base. And I don't know if it's likely to happen. Dark is an amazing player in these positions. I was talking about that, but I've been with you the entire time. All it takes, I feel, is that Zoun correctly, actually says, okay, I can go ahead and defeat you. And he's right. It's going to take one of those fights, and I think it will be one-sided. Zoun's just been pushing it a little too soon. So now that he's patient, he's got 3rd base, got a 4th base on the way. I think this is where Dark's very unupgraded layer-based army should start to push over. I don't see it very long.
The thing is, though, is that the Lurker count is increasing and the carrier count is increasing very, very slowly. If there was 6 carriers at this point, I would say, well, this is going to be an easy push-in. But right now, there's so many Lurkers that with a purely or almost purely ground-based army, this might be difficult to break. I think he can keep denying this base, At least that's what Zoun is going to try. He's going to try to force a couple of lurkers back as well. But I'm not quite sure if he can just A-move into this. Actually, I'm quite sure that he can.
Yeah, maybe playing a bit of a dangerous game by again trying to push in. I mean, if he just builds up steadily on 4 bases, it's not like Dark is really... Still, it's not really mining that well. When his 4th base is, finally getting saturated here, his other bases are very much just out of minerals. But Zoun has plenty of storms, things that he can still control the area, and is once again going to push in. The Lurker's undefended as the Hydra's forced to dodge away from the storms, and there's the click on the hatchery to take that out. He will lose what looks to be like quite a few of those High Templars, and actually Dark, he wants some revenge. He's gonna go in after the remaining army, but it looks like just enough storms were available. Even a force field. Is there another storm? Oh, there's no storm! Oh, and he gets sniped as well! Oh, I thought that last storm was actually going to be able to force the, to actually save the retreat, but it didn't happen. Dark is able to take down a lot of units before Zoun gets out.
Nah, that was a beautiful fight for Zoun, though. The way that he did that, very patient, just moving in and out, and kind of forcing Dark to unburrow a couple of times, really helped him in that fight. And these type of trades right now are so good for Zoun, even if it's just a one-on-one trade. I mean, Zoun is just outmining his opponent so much. He's getting these +1 carriers out. He has a lot of Zealots here. He once again has a bunch of Templar, and right now there is actually no lurkers on the map. So these Templars and these Zealots are going to do so well. GG gets called. Zoun, after a very long time that he needed to finish the game, does end up winning game number 2. Absolutely, I love that. That was great. Great play. Very patient out of Zoun. A couple of fights where perhaps he didn't need to commit as hard. The way he did that, the final 2-3 minutes, I think was just perfect, where he just goes in. It's like, hey, I can deny the mining behind that fort base so well. And it's at that point Dark kind of gets forced to do something. He needs to move forward, kind of dance into the storm. And I know a lot of Zerg players like dancing, but dancing in the storms is one thing that I don't think most of them enjoy. So yeah, just really nice play out of Zoun in this, especially the last 3-4 minutes. I think were fantastic.
Yeah, it wasn't the maxed out Protoss army that easily cleans up the totally unupgraded Lair army that maybe could have happened if Zoun wanted to play that style, but it still was a lot of fights that were just not going well enough for Dark. Dark really needed Zoun to A, overcommit, and then B, mess up back at home basically. Like not have High Templars ready with storms, not have shield batteries, not have enough gateways, something really basic that of course Zoun's not going to mess up. So Dark knew what position he was in. He did make it very interesting more than a few times, and that's what we love to see from Dark, is just his ability to make even bad units look good. Like the whole Roach equal Dark thing is like, you don't usually give Roaches a lot of credit, but when it's Dark you do.
Yeah. I also think if he has those 5 lurkers in that middle fight, well, I'm not even sure if Zoun goes in there, but I mean, that really was a big deal. I didn't even realize during the fight, and afterwards, you're like, hey, what are these 5 lurkers doing defending the fort base that wasn't even attacked? And I'm like, well, I guess these guys would have been pretty useful there. So, definitely a couple of smaller errors there, and a very odd opener still. I feel like I've been the opener was just something out of 2017, wasn't it? 56 workers, Hydra, Ling all in, against someone going for 6k charge Archon. Like we're back in the olden days here, Zombie Grub, and to be quite honest, I don't mind it if it produces this type of games.
That was funny. They both decided to throw it back at the same exact time, and I still there's so many other things that could happen during that pseudo base trade where they did literally trade a base for a base, so Lair for a third Nexus. That it's hard to say what should happen when those two builds collide. But as it is, Dark was the one who was, I feel like just doing, I don't even know if it was more of an all-in, but a bit less mobile of an army, a bit more of an army that has to stay concentrated together, right? Whereas for Zoun, the Warp Prism micro could really come in, the threat of the Warp Prism in general can come in, storms, one storm can change everything against Ling Hydra. That's something that Zoun had, where Dark was basically just I push Ling Hydra into you, and it no work. And that's it doesn't give you much flexibility. So I think overall it kind of makes sense as to why that worked out, but yeah, there's just too many variables. I can't say what build was supposed to win there.
Yeah, we also kind of had that moment where there was a little bit of indecision on the indecisiveness on the side of Dark, right? He wasn't at first he sent his army back home, and he was like, "All right, I'll go for the base trade." So that also doesn't help. If you're base trading, it really helps to beat the first guy in your opponent's base. So
Yeah.
I think that's also a pretty big factor.
He could have killed the third Nexus, or actually he could have, destroyed everything defending it and then moved immediately to the natural, which, was his plan, but then I think that's exactly when he did pull back. But then, yeah, his queen reinforcement was starting to clear things up. So, exactly, like if he had just pushed into the natural, was there enough to defend? As when I said maybe breaking the natural is a bit too difficult, I looked, shield batteries were only just starting. So, it really is a seconds game at that point. Maybe the shield batteries finish, shield battery overcharge with the high ground is pretty good. Maybe it's not good enough because there was like one immortal. that was kind of it. But we'll not know.
Yeah.
We know that for a fact that it is now a tied series, and these two are living up to the hype of the series. Usually I wouldn't say PvZ is my most sought after match here, but when I looked at the bracket, I was with a lot of other people. We're just like, these guys are creating their own little rivalry, and it's still being pushed here as they exchange blow for blow, series for series, game for game.
Yeah, it's a nice series as well. Next map is going to be Romanticide, which I assume we're going to see a slightly more passive game there. We think of Oxide, and I already forgot about the first map. Could you remind me?
First map was
2000 atmospheres.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So these two maps, they do lend themselves a little bit more for aggression, for odd scenarios, but Romanticide, of course, very easy initial first 3 bases, and then maybe we'll see some play around the 4th base, but even there it can be quite difficult to push into that. So I'm curious to see what both of these guys will bring to the table. Zoun did have a little bit of a change of style. He hasn't built a single disruptor yet in this series, which kind of was his kind of the unit that he used. It's kind of his trademark unit. He was like, he built 2 robos and starts pumping out disruptors like his life defense. Right? So I'm surprised that he changed it, and that he rushes into Storm very quick. I wanted to mention this earlier. I kind of forgot. I already talked so much, and I do like hearing myself, but not that much. And I forgot to mention it again. Is that he tends to skip Archons very much in the early game to get way faster Storm. He gets the Storm, and then he starts warping in Archons after. So he gets these really big timings that very often you don't see with Protoss players, because they want these early Archons either for safety or just for some pushing power, just having some quick pushing power. He pushes slightly later, especially in that game number 1, of course. Second game was Charge Archon, so he naturally had some Archons, but even there he felt like the Storm for the situation was pretty rapid, and it's cool to see, because there have been some players, namely Zez, who's been skipping Storm a lot in PvZ and just kind of staying on that Archon Zealot type of style. And it's nice to see that there's different styles, even though they all kind of look alike, and they tend to go towards a Charge Lot, Archon, Immortally vibe. If you do want to play a longer game, there's still some difference in how people like to get there and how aggressive they want to be with their army on the map. It's cool to see Zoun also switch it up every other week.
Yeah, I think because they've been exchanging so many series, actually Zoun's been winning them, but they've been playing so many. He maybe is well aware that he's going to have to change things up. He was showing a variety of builds in the previous games that they played, and now just continuing to bring out other ones, including very old ones or slightly different styles. Yeah, the very fast Storm, I remember like studying this stuff and being like, okay, they get like the 3rd base gas is like ASAP, and maybe they're going to play into that. But then so much of the last year and a half or even longer has been like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll get Storm, we'll get there eventually, or even just, not at all.
Yeah.
Zest, I suppose, but I also remember Neeb playing I'm not going to forget this match because it was a 27-minute PvZ, I think, where Storm never entered into play, and I was like, okay, that's a choice, all right. Yeah, it's different ways of getting to, as you said, kind of approximately the same looking army, but can very much change how engagements are had, or how the composition works out. So I like it. This map, Romanticide, it was a map where Dark initially tried to push the Queen issue, and then actually started to stumble because the Queen all-in wasn't working, and it was somewhat because Zoun was going into disruptors. Can we have that here again, Or are they both going to continue playing these old styles, these odd styles, styles that they're hoping each other aren't aware that they're doing? Because I kind of prefer that. But you're right, Romanicide's pretty defensive. We could have maybe a stock standard game.
If Dark goes for a 55 drone Hydra attack on this map, like, I'll actually buy my ticket to Korea. Like, flame him in real life, because that is not a thing on Romanticide. There's absolutely no way he does that. I'd love to see him open Hydra again, though. That is a possibility, but I feel like at some point Zoun is gonna catch on. He's gonna throw out a glaive build. Like, there is a reason why these Hydra builds just aren't as popular anymore, and the reason is that glaive build just kind of destroy them. Like, you get your 4-gate glaives going, the other guy has 6 Hydras and 10 links. It's like, well, both of these units get hard countered by glaive adepts. Good luck, you know?
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a very rough fight. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dark is kind of playing with that. You know, it's like, all right, I showed 2 times Hydras now. I'm kind of expecting some glaive stuff, so perhaps we'll see like a quick roach. We'll see something like a quick roach, and I wouldn't even mind that. And in that case, if you do push back a glaive attack, you know, a Stargate into glaive attack I'm talking about in that case, it is completely possible that we'll see some type of counter attack with Roach and maybe even a Nidus, because that is still a possibility in Romanticide. It's the Nidus. Even though it's not great, but it is a possibility.
I do wonder, though, because I am totally on board with this. I mentioned, like, perhaps Dark realized that Zoun's not using those mid-game attacks anymore, because they didn't do so well the first time that they played, and so getting into Hydra is kind of it's easy enough. But then Romanticide, yeah, it's been 2 games of nothing in the earlier mid game from Zoun. Although his first push is like kind of early on, but yeah, no adept attack. Romanticide is such a good map for the defensive, like right into Stargate play, and that is what Zoun likes to do on this map. So I wonder if Dark is going to take more so the map into consideration, or the previous 2 games into consideration, and what risks will he take? Because I feel like he's been playing you pointed out with the initial hatch rate, actually, like he's playing kind of risky games, and he might even still on Romanticide, because while there's a bunch of reasons why you shouldn't do the 55 Hydra bust, that's exactly why it works, Harsum. The biggest of brain plays, okay? I wanted to do it now.
That's how it works. Maybe he wants to do it. I mean, it's a free country. He can do what he wants, but I would not recommend it to Dark if he doesn't want to go down 1-2. Yeah. Nah, it's just not great on this map, right? It takes insanely long to get to the other side of the map. Hydras are slow. People underestimate this. They see them zooming by on creep, but you need to make a decision when you do these attacks. Do I get my Hydra range, or do I get the Hydra speed? And there's no real good answer, because ideally you want to get both at the same time. And then walking across the map with slow Hydras, walking up a ramp, which can be defended in a single choke. Yeah, I wish him a lot of luck there. I think you can actually defend this with a fort base going up if you're Zoun. Like, it's just not very good. But I mean, I've lost the worst strategies personally, so I wouldn't count it out.
Not to over focus on the Hydra bust. That was just an example of Dark doing something a bit weirder, and still risky is ultimately what I was getting to. But yeah, of course, like the Romanticide choke is such a big deal that even though it shares, I think, the same rush distance as Oxide, it's just its defensive properties are so much different. We've been just babbling along here, guys, not because we really both love listening to our own voices, but because there was some of that lag issue, and we're hoping to get that fixed. Now we're heading into the game. Zoun versus Dark, game 3 on Romanticide. It's still happening. We didn't forget. And now we're into the game. So we can actually see how they're going to continue playing these games. Because these guys, I mean, it's gone from the, supposedly the one-sided series it was supposed to be back at GSL, and now is headed into something where, we're starting to talk about like their mentalities against each other and how risky they think they can play, turning into a real rivalry. So here we are. Game 3, bottom rights, you have the red Protoss, Alpha X's Zoun.
And in the top left, spawning once again as the blue Zerg player for Team Dragon Phoenix Gaming, it is going to be Dark. Once again, we have that quick probe moving out. Yeah, we already discussed the map a little bit, and now we can also get some visual cues there as we For example, we take a look at that ramp that we were discussing, that third base ramp on the side of Zoun or Dark. Doesn't really matter. You can see it's going to be very easy to defend with basically a single choke of units, couple of force fields or a battery on top of there, which kind of makes all types of all-ins bad on this map. Walking up a ramp is never what you want, both for Zerg and for Protoss. Meanwhile, we have Zoun trying his absolute best. I'm always a big fan of looking at the probe, just going ham at the minerals. I always like to zoom in, and both of these guys, you know that right now at this moment, they're just spamming those minerals. Maybe even with what's it called? The button that spams it really fast. I'm completely blanking on this word here.
Wait, rapid fire?
Rapid fire. There
okay.
we go. Rapid fire mining. Oh my god. We've been playing this game for 12 years. Yeah, 11 years, and couldn't remember the word rapid fire. It happens to the best, okay? It's been a rough day. We have Zoun opening up with a Nexus before core, as he always does. He also has been showing before that he likes his glaive opener, just his glaive adept. And I'm not saying Stargate into glaive adept, no, just pure glaives. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this once this series. Romanticide is not the greatest map for it, but that it's still a possibility. We're actually seeing Stalker, no. He started with a Stalker and I got really excited. And then all of a sudden he built an adept and I got less excited.
Yeah.
But I'm still looking forward to this game regardless on Big Rob.
Okay, I believe you, don't worry. So it is, again, the Stargate Adept Gateway Stargate. And Dark, I don't know if he's never going to be tricked by this really. Again, not that he was really tricked in the first game. So far, the deflection of the Oracle has been good, if not sometimes great. Last game, it did delay Zoun scouting by, I think, like 20 seconds. Eventually, he saw the Hydralisk end, most importantly. So it's not really supposed to get a lot of damage done. If it is tricky, then of course we'll talk about it. But so far, Dark's got his queens in the right position, has a Spore Crawler still in the nick of time, and we'll get to see something more interesting perhaps develop after that. This was the map that Zoun, many maps can do this, but especially map Romanticide, he goes into that second Stargate and then plays with even more Void Rays. And he went into those Disruptors, still something we haven't seen. Would love to see them make an appearance. They're just fun units. I'm totally biased for them.
The thing with this map is that it's actually one of the maps where it doesn't feel as much that you need those disruptors early on, right? Because, oh, look at, by the way, Zoun. He does this very consistently. His probe in is natural. He's so afraid of the drone pool link flood that he always has a probe there between 335 and 345. And then he goes and takes his Nexus with it. It's actually really cool to see that he, even though we haven't seen this build in like a month and a half, he probably lost a lot of ladder points against that in his life. So he's like, never again. And every single game, I noticed this watching his GSL games as well. He did it every single time. Just made me so happy that there's one guy on the Korean ladder that got into his head so much that now he's just completely fine losing those 10 minerals every single game.
It's a tale as old as time, man. The game 5, thinking, okay, I'm just gonna reboot and win this. Oh no, it's a drone pool. Okay, I guess I tap out. Never feels very good. So there is that second Stargate. Dark should be very mindful this is a possibility. He does go for another, actually, it was like a 410 layer or something like that. It's not as quick. Oracle does decide to tackle some drones while the queen is away, but ultimately nothing really found from this little push. Was there even a little bit of scouting done for Zoun? I don't think so. He didn't get into the main, didn't see the natural. No gases to even see at the third base, which I guess isn't of itself a scout, but it is going to be +1 missile and then a Roach Warren. So
yeah.
I'm not going to say anything yet, but there's so many ways that Dark prefaced a Nidus Swarm Queen attack that I'll just wait and see what develops.
Yeah, he has played +1 Queen Roach Nidus attacks and just hoping that a Nidus goes up in the main base, which it's crazy, but it works at times. So it is still a possibility. We see the Hydra then go down now, so that possibility is kind of dwindling. And with the setup into upgrades, is looking a lot like a more standard lurker game out of Dark here. Has single lanes of creep, by the way. He does have 5 queens, but this creep threat is kind of one-dimensional. I mean, you kill 1-2 tumors and you're going to be able to just stop a single lane. Once again, we have the Oracle going in for a scout in the natural. Maybe even wants to go for a stasis. No, just happy with a quick revelation here. These are fast gases out of Zoun, by the way. he's playing kind of freely here. He doesn't care too much about what his opponent can possibly be doing. He scouted a lot, he saw a lot, and he's like, okay, I'm safe. I can take my guesses as fast as I want.
I mean, I think it's still, like, he got a lot of scouting done. I mean, some of these movements might be because he's aware of the possibility of, like, a queen pool. Killing the creep timbers would be very effective against that, but I think the Oracle saw enough to know that it's not going to be a massive queen pool, as there wasn't really that many, and, I didn't actually quite see the 4th base. All right, well, still. That might be one concern. Zoun has really got all of his stuff coming along here. He's added on not just Templar Archives and a 2nd Robo, but of course the Robotics Bay, really assuming that he can actually get everything that he wants in this game. And he is correct, because Dark has also just gone for Roach Hydra, Infestation Pit at 6 minutes, right into that hive, very possibly. And this is our first, I guess, real macro game. Not really a whole lot of tricks or base trades here, which I don't know. I feel like so many of their games were based around some earlier attacks that straight up late game, who gets there first, who gets there better. Not sure who I actually prefer. What I'm going to say is going to win. You noted that Dark's really good here, but then Zoun, I mean, he's Protoss. No, I'm just kidding. Like, it actually can be very interesting late game, and I'm loving seeing the Disruptors, but we also still have a lot of Void Ray production.
I like how you casually threw that in there. I'm not gonna lie, I zoned out a little bit, but that woke me right up again, Zombie. As you mentioned it, the first 2 Disruptors are coming in. We're seeing a lot of cannons being built as well. He's afraid of Mutas. He's not quite sure what's happening. Of course, losing that Oracle is painful. And this is kind of the style that I was referring to the entire time that we hadn't seen yet. I'm glad that he pulls it out at least once, so I don't look like a complete idiot, just like a normal one. And he's gonna try pushing with like 3, 4, maybe 5 Disruptors out on the map, a couple of Archons, and basically go for an anti-Lurk or anti-Hydra Roach timing before Vipers are truly out. At least that is the goal. And then once Vipers are out, you can transition into Storm, and Templar are very useful, of course, against Vipers. We're actually going to be seeing that move out now. A thing that Dark wants to do against this probably is to have some type of counterattack set up. So he's moving out these Roaches, and he meets a big hello there from Zoun, who takes out 4 or 5 of those Roaches. It's gonna be a tough hold here, because I mean, there's no Vipers on the way yet. He opted for Nidus instead.
Yeah, he was able to play around with Nidus a little bit last time they met on Romanicide, because he opened up, kind of with the Nidus, but now just adding it on as a unique tool for the later stages. It is first and foremost about defending this push. Now, Disruptors, they have a big weakness, and that's that they don't do so well when they're surrounded. They got a bit of a concave coming in. They're looking for the Queens, or more preferably the Lurkers, but a good pull away from Dark, who is also still dodging on the left side as well. Dark still up in supply, starting to take down some of these Void Rays. Lurkers still alive, although injured, and Zoun is forced to retreat with whatever he can. Disruptors looking to safeguard that retreat as well. He will be able to escape with, by the looks of things, his robo units, but not much else.
Yeah, this looked perhaps like a weird fight for a lot of people, where it's like, well, why wasn't he just more careful with his Disruptors? With Disruptors over time, you get better damage, right? And that's true. So ideally, Zoun wants to stretch out the fight as long as possible, but you shouldn't forget that really nothing happened in this game, and that usually Zerg players go straight for Vipers. So Zoun actually was fighting against a fictional Viper timing that wasn't there at all, because Dark said, you know what, you're just going to push into me anyway, I'm just going to continue my upgrades, I'm going to get a Nidus out, and this actually puts Dark in a fantastic position. Skipping these Vipers was a little bit risky, and would have been risky if Zoun would have engaged into this a lot more careful and over a longer period of time, waiting for 2-3 cooldown cycles on these Disruptors. I mean, what would Dark really do? He can't engage into that, so he just would have had to take the hits. But now that that wasn't the case, and Zoun went way too quick, Dark all of a sudden is in a pretty nice position. He has the ability to counterattack with a Nidus. He has insanely good upgrades. 3-2 is on the way, and he has all of his Lurker upgrades out right now as well.
That's what's truly scary. They're able to dodge out of the Disruptors in real time, basically, and then also have that extended range, so pushing away the rest of the army back faster. Good cleanup in the main base, as Zoun was going for a bit of a 1-2 punch. I think really just hoping to keep up the pressure while he sets up his own late game macro. Like, he actually didn't set up his Stargate as fast as I thought he would, but there's a second one, Fleet Beacon as well, upgrades too. It's still very concerning because that did not last for very long. And during it, Dark was expanding and continuing his upgrades, of which he's already got good ones, but just going into 3-2. And now here is the push. Zoun has lost all credibility on the offensive and now is purely on the defensive, which is going to get tough. Already the Archon's taking a lot of shots. Only one lurker getting bopped there, was it? The Disruptors, a couple of them left with shots, but not much else aside from these Disruptors. And oh no, the Nidus Worm in the main. Oh my god, how do you even stop that? The lurkers insta-burrow, some Zealots just woefully trying to defend. That's never gonna happen, my dude. And Zoun, despite staying at a somewhat okay supply, is really in a terrible place. Some Zealots are trying to run by and do some damage, but it's not working. And Dark takes a very clean game number 3, now up 2-1.
Yeah, very painful loss there for Zoun. I just was looking at that Nidus intently, and I see these warp gates are warping in units, and I'm looking to see where they're being warped in, and they weren't in the main base. So Zoun did have vision of that Nidus, but sadly for him, didn't see it. I'm not sure if he otherwise would have been fine, but that Nidus just put so much pressure on you to basically defend at your third and defend it quickly. Say you could go deal with the units in your main base. It becomes very painful very quickly. Beautiful game out of Dark though, where he did take a few liberties. He took a couple of risks, but if those risks work out, I mean, you look like a freaking genius. And this time around, Dark looked super clean. His early game was beautiful. I like that he didn't go for that Hydra. Opener again. His eco seemed a lot better. His forward base was extremely well timed as well. I just absolutely love this game out of Dark. And the moment we entered this game, Zoun is already spamming go, go, go. This is a game he wasn't happy with. You can feel that. He kind of got tricked there into believing there was going to be Vipers, and his game plan was based around that, basically that knowledge that there was going to be Vipers, and there were no Vipers there, and Dark just had this powerful counterattack with these 3-2 upgrades, and Zoun just wasn't quite ready.
And I mean, if people are like, oh, what's a couple of Vipers? What's maybe 3 Vipers? A pretty standard thing for Zergs to get. It's actually a ton of gas. At the moment you were talking about that timing, he actually was down to like sub 100 gas. So it would have absolutely injured his army composition, the one that was, the most important thing to defend against that push. So it absolutely would have changed how that battle went down. Less units is not just less firepower, it's also less of a concave against those Disruptors. It's a lot more bullying from Zoun too. And instead it was Zoun who got bullied, twice over, and then the final third time was his defeat. But never really had a lot of pressure to apply to Dark. Dark was all over it, defended it very, very well. Now we head to Blackburn for game 4. And I'm glad to have you on the call, Arson, because what PVZ? Because I know what it is for Terrans. I like it for Terrans, but how about for PVZ?
I don't know. I think I had it vetoed since day 2.
That says it all.
It's not brilliant against Zerg. Usually maps with a gold as a forward base aren't great for Protoss. It is nice that you can kind of stand behind it, but it's also a relatively short map. Even though Queen Walks aren't the hardest to defend on, it's also not the easiest. I personally, I'm not a massive fan of it. I know there's some tosses that don't mind it as much, and I don't think it would ever be my first veto. That would probably be Lightshade instead in a PvZ, but yeah, it's still there on the veto list. It's gonna go down, whether that's first or second. I ain't playing that map in a best of 3. And with my tournament results, you never need to worry about playing best of 5. So I haven't played it yet.
Oh, the self-burn. Oh boy. We're gonna just bob past that one. Yeah, it's a map that actually is not any shorter than I believe than like an Oxide or Romanicide as far as that main to main goes. It might be a little bit short, but not by very much. It's not Lightshade, it's not Beckett Industries, but it has this point in the middle that feels like once it's like past that point, it's suddenly like the shortest map in the world. We'll talk more about it after the intros. In the bottom left, as usual, sending out a probe, it is the red Protoss, Zoun.
And in the bottom right, as the blue Zerg isn't sending out a drone, but I wish he was, it's going to be Dragon Phoenix Gaming Dark. That's the one thing that Dark doesn't really do, right? It's not a proxy hatcher. I would like to see it though, just every now and then, add it in.
Ooh, I think we were about to see who the culprit was.
Yeah, we were really close to figuring out who it was. I was very excited as well.
Darn it.
Unless it's me, of course. I would have been a lot less excited at that point.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's I'm actually surprised by the instability on the Korean server today. It used to be like 6 years ago that anyone off of the Korean server and anyone who wasn't in Korea actually had like some insane problems, and that was before they fixed the I don't know the proper term for it, but like they fixed it so that observers stopped lagging the actual game as much. So like we could like kind of lag out a bit, but then it wouldn't affect them. But it's supposed to be fixed by now, so I don't know. Gonna drop all the non-essentials here and hope that fixes things up.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna have that third base this time on the, the natural on the third base location this time. So Dark's not playing any big plays there with sending the drone back or anything like that. We saw on Oxide, which I don't quite mind. We saw it's so funny when that type of stuff happens to you. You see Zoun was just leaving his probe like 3 seconds longer on the natural than you usually do. He was still there at 101, and last time he left at 57 seconds. I think if you look at series and you see these type of changes, it just feels so good if you're Dark. You know, you see the guy just staying down longer with his probe. You see him patrol the probe behind this gateway wall at like 335. It just feels good. Even though it's such minor wins, you're just laughing out. Look at this guy. He's so scared.
Yeah. Well, you feel really in control. You feel like the powerful one in the series, even though it's a very slight thing. I mean, I think everyone out there can understand the feeling of power that you get from killing a Reaper that wasn't supposed to be killed. You know, you just sit there and you laugh at the Terran and you're like, oh my god, he messed up. Oh, what a loser. Kind of the same thing here. Just, you know, oh yeah, I got him. This is my early game. I feel very powerful indeed.
Yeah, I think there's no better feeling in the world than if your opponent proxy Reapers you and you surround the first Reaper with your probes. Just kill it. Kills nothing. It's such a powerful feeling. And in that situation, it actually matters a lot as well, because it would have done some tangible damage. But even in these situations where it's like, well, this wouldn't have mattered at all, it's still big. It's the same. Sometimes I randomly send my adept from my natural just into a random direction where I think the Zerglings will come from. And then if you find that one Zergling that's like hidden in, imagine the 12 o'clock base, and he's like, oh man, I just destroyed you mentally, and you know the game's already over. Well, usually at least that's what I think, and then I still lose to the Queen Walk. But I mean, technically it could have been. You know, it's the thought that counts sometimes on Europe, and we shouldn't forget that. It's gonna see a Robo here, by the way. I've been talking a lot of nonsense, but this is kind of interesting. What do you think this is gonna be? He's not pulling out of gas. Maybe Disruptor drop?
Well, that would be pretty cool. I mean, Zoun is definitely a player who's brought out some crazy strategies before. He was a guy who had some strong timings, had some crazy strategies. It felt like maybe the North American server, North American team was influencing him a little bit much. And it was cool to watch him, but he hadn't really solidified the rest of his game yet. Now we have Zoun, who plays some more solid games overall, who's like really perfected things like a killer instinct and mindset and whatnot. But apparently can still throw it back to some wacky builds. It definitely looks like a Disruptor opener. I mean, that or a Colossus. Robotics Pay is almost done. More Prisms on the way. We'll see what the choice is. I don't know. I just want to watch this unfold, actually. You know what? I'm not even taking any guesses. I want to watch this unfold. I want to be convinced this is actually a cool opener, because it's certainly one of the more fun ways to play Protoss.
That's for sure. We're going to be seeing a second gas going down here for Dark. As a Rotor, and he also built a Spore in the main, which is kind of expensive if you're not playing against a Stargate opener. When single Spore, there's 2 Queens in the natural, 1 Queen at the third base. He's building a bunch of Roaches already. And if he goes into this gas and starts mining it, and I don't think he should. I think he should just, he's gonna go for it.
Yeah, he is. Okay, all right, this is perhaps not what Zoun was anticipating going up against. He's got some adepts flying out. Hey, where's the Disruptor? Oh.
I think this isn't an attack. I think Dark thinks that this is the Glaive build.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
he did the dark response, which is getting 2-3 Ravagers. So you surround your opponent with links, and then you throw down vials. And right now, Dark is feeling like a complete idiot. He's like, wait a second, I invested a lot in this cast. That's gonna cost me a lot of economy. He immediately throws down 8 drones, and now we have the Colossi follow up. Oh my god! Wait, he got in the base. What?
Oh gosh. Okay, well. I mean, maybe this gets cleaned up because we are talking about 4 gateways, actually, 6 eventually. The Adepts will clean up the Lings. It's just like his build has now been fully scouted. It was a bamboozle to begin with, and that is something to appreciate. But now it's been fully scouted. The Disruptors use their first shot. Zoun is going to clean things up while also continuing with his build, which I really respect. Moving out in a hectic scenario with Disruptors and a Warp Prism, that's risky. That is, oh god, it does take some, oh no. Oh, the Queen, oh. Okay, all right, you do you, Queen. You do you. The Warp Prism does take some hull damage, and that's what I was worried about, was that he would miss micro for just a second while dealing with those Lings, but it is alive. This game got a bit weirder thanks to that Ling run by.
That was a big deal, though. He missed both of his Disruptor shots. So he could have gone for a safe kill on a Queen, but instead he decided to kind of risk it all to get these Ravagers, and he completely missed them. Now these Ravagers are still on the left side, and he's gonna pull what we refer to as the Rainer. Rainer was really famous for this, the 3 Ravager squad. What you do is you come from the back, from the side, from the front, it doesn't matter where you come from, and you go and snipe that stupid Prism. And once that Prism dies, the push ends, because you need to micro these units back. You need to warp in at all times, and take a look at these 3 Ravagers. These are going to be so freaking important, but they're actually not in a very good position. I think Dark should probably wait a little bit longer with attacking into this.
Well, he thinks the concave is going to be good enough. The Lings, though, they get burnt much faster than perhaps Dark was anticipating. At Colossus doing God's work right now, and still a good number of Adepts as well. So the Ling surrounds, they weren't as good as he was hoping. The Warp Prism kept in the back just enough. Blackburn actually really coming into effect here as the rocks were up. The slow zone was in effect, but he still doesn't know about it. Here come the Ravagers. There goes the Warp Prism. But how about the attack on the front lines? Actually, he missed! How did the Warp Prism live? Okay, well, the attack on the front lines is also still happening. Now the Warp Prism can't exactly go into phase mode, but it can help micro as the drones are pulled into this. Dark, he had such a beautiful concave, a beautiful attempt to kill that Warp Prism. It still isn't dead! How is that possible? It finally goes down, and it looks like the Colossus might fall next, but another drone pool is necessary. The Disruptor pops off on it, and Dark is now down to 29 workers. And I mean, he might clean this up, sure, but the economy is in the trash for our Zerg.
These are targeted abilities on a static target. I can't believe it.
I just assumed.
Oh, that was so big. That was such a big miss. Oh my god. Okay, well, I mean, at this point, Dark has a decent army still, so he should be able to survive. There's no more Prism alive for now. There's a Colossi on the way, which I think a Prism first probably would have made a little more sense, so you can kind of keep up the pressure. I still think... I'm not sure, actually. I have no clue about this position. The income is in favor of Zoun, for sure. We see a lot more income there, but... I mean, his army isn't that powerful, and it's mainly going to be gateway units against an army that's going to have 7-8 Ravagers. If these Ravagers don't eat a couple of Disruptor shots to the face, I actually don't even really mind the position here. And Dark realizes that if he gets that Disruptor down, he probably just kind of wins the game. He does tank that Disruptor shot with 3 of the Roaches. Man, this turned into a crazy game. I really thought once that Prism dies, it's just over, but the Prism didn't die, and well, I guess then it isn't over.
It's a weird one for sure. The Stalkers, despite not having Blink or being as pesky as if they did, just, sizing things up correctly enough. Colossus joins in to help burst down the Lings especially, but we are down to just 1 Disruptor, and that's... 2 Disruptors, I feel like, actually opens up opportunities to either push or retreat, right? Because you need a second shot to kind of safeguard it. But 1, it's like when it's done, that's potentially a big green light for the Zerg. But I feel like Zoun's army actually just might be big enough. It doesn't have Blink, it doesn't have any upgrades, and the Disruptor's not exactly hitting very much. But the Colossus, the continued warp in, Zoun is actually taking a gold base behind this too, where Dark only got up to 36 drones. I think at the end of the day, Dark still loses. Yeah.
I mean, it isn't looking great for Dark. He's just trying to hang on at this point. The Biles are doing a good job zoning out this army, but with the next Disruptor shot, it is looking very, very bad as Zoun takes game number 4. And I don't think he should have taken it. I think Dark is gonna kick himself a little bit here because that was a huge miss. That was painful. He probably got so excited he just threw that mouse all across the screen and was like, all right, I got you, buddy. And not getting that allowed Zoun, first of all, to pick up those disruptors out of the funky position, and afterwards even get another 5-6 Stalker warping in. That was insanely painful. Because if those 5-6 extra Stalkers don't join, these initial drones are gonna go down. But the second round of drones, which was another 10-12 drones that end up going down, actually, yeah, it's just pain. It's pain, Zombie Grub.
It's painful, yeah. I feel like that was one of the strongest cases of accusing Dark of having nerves I've ever seen. Because otherwise, I would never accuse Dark of having nerves. This guy's like not just a seasoned pro, just he's cool. We went over that. You don't expect
cool.
it, but
He's cool.
I feel like that was exactly the type of nerves that is an excited type of nerves. Like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna win. And then as soon as they throw the ball to you, you just like completely miss it. You drop it. It doesn't look so hot. Actually, it looks a little bit embarrassing because this isn't 2015. We're not just learning about the corrosive bile, and we're not teaching all the Zergs to put on the the flyer tag thing. It's just 6 years later and kind of supposed to hit those shots. So, it's one of those games that Dark's just like, ooh, gosh, wish this wasn't in front of thousands of people.
Yeah, that was painful. A sick build, by the way, by Zoun. I liked it. Throwing that in there, we kind of glossed over it, but it was an interesting build. Of course, he opened up with Adept Stalker. His second gate actually went down at hit 324, which surprised me because usually if you're faking this type of stuff, you want to get a slightly faster second gate. But it seemed like Dark still completely bought it, went for the second gas, built a couple of Ravagers. If Dark wouldn't have gotten in initially with the Lynx, which by the way also should never happen at this level, I think he just almost straight up dies. It becomes really, really difficult. These two Disruptors fly across the map a lot faster, probably get 2 shots in each before the push hits, and you probably can get a couple of units with that. It's also a bigger surprise, so Dark isn't quite as prepared for that. Yeah, I was a fan of that. I was a fan of mixing that in, and now all of a sudden, once again, we're in a game number 5 between Zoun and Dark.
Yeah, happens a lot, man. They get to the game 5s, game 3s. It's very evenly matched, even when it's sometimes the games themselves are not exactly the most, the perfect games of StarCraft hitting each other. Maybe a bit imperfect, but it is nonetheless very fun. And I think that now, there was a lot of probably apprehension about Zoun doing an Adept build. Like, you got to be on your toes, you got to be prepared for it, and if you are super prepared for it, then you can actually totally slam dunk it, get rid of it, push, win. Dark was probably thinking about that too, getting all excited. Now it's still in your head. Like, okay, he's the tricky build, but it could always also go back to the standard, definitely can kill you type of Adept build. It's game 5. We haven't actually seen it yet. We've seen basically a fake. We've seen some Void Rays. We've seen some Disruptors. We saw Disruptors rock. It's been actually a bit of everything except the Adept build. We've actually seen it all. Well, that's not true. We've seen a lot, but we haven't seen it all. But perhaps this is going to be the game where we do end up seeing it all. And I think it's going to depend a lot on this man, as in the bottom left, spawning as the red Protoss player, playing for Team Alpha X. It's going to be Zoun. And in the top right for Team DPG, he is the blue Zerg, Dark.
Yeah. I'm so curious what he's going to do. The only thing he's been very consistent in is blocking that natural. I'm glad to see that, but everything else, he's just been doing whatever he feels like. And we're going straight for a 17 drone here, rather than going 16 drones initially. He knows he's gonna get blocked. He's going 18 drones. 18 actually, that's very late, Zombie Grub.
Yeah, did it last game, actually. I was gonna bring it up as just like, oh, well, I guess if you're anticipating having to go the extra mile to your third base, then trying to get that 16 hatch when you know that they're just sending that probe out basically as fast as possible, right? Like, I don't think you can get any faster. Then it's maybe not worth trying.
Yeah, but the thing is that you just want to usually what you do is you send your drone forward to spot for the probe coming in, and then if there's no worker, you go back, and you can still get a 17 hatch down at your third base usually. But it seems like Dark is completely fine with getting that 18 hatch down. In Europe, we actually have what we call the Ricky hatch. It's the 19 hatchery. It's when you completely forget to set out the drone and you have to throw down your hatchery at 19.
I like that. I like it. I like specifically that you call someone out for it too. That's the one
For people,
great thing about not being a pro.
Know, so. Yeah, the people who don't know who Ricky is, that's sort of. So next time you see him, make sure to mention it. Sorry for interrupting you, but I figured I gotta throw it out there, you know?
True.
I'm not sure if I'm taking off air after this, but at least I want to get that message out.
Yeah, I was just saying the benefit of not being a pro is that no one cares of calling the accidental command center before like barracks the zombie grub. And I'm just like, oh, okay, no one saw that, so that's fine. Which I definitely still do. 11 years of playing Terran and occasionally command center before orbital. That's sometimes still a mistake I make. So now maybe it will be called that, and that's going to be fabulous if that catches on, but it's okay. I don't do it often enough. Another robo opener. Okay.
What do you think of that, zombie girl?
I can't imagine he does the disruptor build again. I mean, fair enough, it wasn't exactly executed to the best of its ability. The Lings got in, things got awkward. It shouldn't have worked out, I guess, as well as it did because of the Warp Prism, but it just in general, I feel like that was a very Blackburn type of build where it's very much about hitting each other and not a whole lot of, honestly, that much finesse, not like run bys or big surrounds. We saw how troublesome it was for Dark to do it. Jagannatha is a very different map, so, but he's apparently going to do it again. I guess maybe the follow-up can be different, right? Like he had different branches on top of this tree trunk.
Yeah, that's true. There can be different branches on top of this tree trunk. And you know what they say, never change a winning team. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. If you have any more, feel free to chime in. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it just feels that a build does well against a player. Even if the build technically isn't great or is supposed to be like a complete win, sometimes players aren't, you know, some players just are worse against certain things, even if those things are less optimal. Like you can, as a Protoss, completely struggle with Swarm Host, even though Swarm Host aren't perhaps the best way to play for a Zerg. But if you're a Protoss player that struggles with Swarm Host and the other guy keeps playing Swarm Host, you're going to be pretty pissed. And perhaps Dark just really struggles with this build, or maybe Zoun thinks he struggled with this build. Dark, by the way, once again going for the triple roach into Ravager. Dark also really not believing that it's going to be the same thing twice. Now, it's going to be a very identical game. The only thing I do hope for Zoun is that the Lynx don't get in again this time, because that would actually be very sad for him.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to happen. It's a pretty obvious fake, in my opinion, at this point. We're also seeing the spores, because I love this so much. I'm gonna explain after this happens what is happening right here, but this is really, really good for Zoun. I can assure you that 2 drones go down, good trades, and we see triple spore crawlers, double gas roach warren coming out of Dark. So Dark basically was like, okay, I don't think there's any way you're going to play the same disruptor drop build again, so I'm gonna prepare for the 2 other scenarios, which are realistically DT drop and the glaive build. But once again, it's disruptor drop, so this early game is way worse than last game because there's 3 spores as well. That's so insanely expensive here, and now the disruptor drop comes out, worker count is even at this point. And I think Dark is going to need to start producing roaches already. The problem here is that if they get into this type of game, is that Dark isn't even really outmining his opponent by that much. Like, it's not actually going to be great. Awful disruptor shots out of Zoun there, by the way. Once again, just not focusing well with them. He's not going to kill anything.
Yeah, I was going to point that out too. One disruptor shot doesn't kill the queen, so just like taking the energy and also missing one as well, which is very awkward to see. Yeah, that's not usually what you would want, but it is, I guess, the appetizer to the main course, and the main course is the push with the Colossus. Dark has it, he's figured it out, but after he afforded all of these things, now he's going to try to use them the best way possible. Spore Crawlers on the front line, hoping to at least stop the Warp Prism from microing or from the Colossus being a little too bold. Actually, a bit awkward here. The Lings kind of get a wraparound before the Colossus is involved, and now we have some stutter step that maybe wasn't really Zoun's plan. That Warp Prism also getting dangerously close to the corrosive biles, which again barely missed, but I'll excuse it this time as it was just shy because of the terrain, basically, right? But this was not nearly as good of a start. The controlling aspect that was there last game on Blackburn isn't so much here this time around.
Yeah, and last game on Blackburn, you actually made a great point, which we didn't really touch down on too much, but it's very important that you always keep one disruptor shot for retreating as well. And that's not what Zoun did this time around, so that allowed Dark to go for that surround. And once again, aggressively moving on to creep without really having any vision of where his opponent's flank is coming from. This is pure suicide here out of Zoun, who hasn't been looking too great this game in terms of controlling his army.
Right, yeah, that's really where it got messed up. I mean, there is always a little bit of that, like, not that it's a bad play, but kind of like, you're not supposed to be so aggressive against me. Like, I'm the one who's shocking you. I'm the one that's coming in here with a 2-base build. You're supposed to be setting up and trying desperately to spam the roach button. So what's the deal, man? Why are you attacking me before my Colossus comes here? Which, by the way, I want to check the replay and see if that Colossus got AI'd, because I could have sworn it was with the army, and then suddenly it wasn't. And, you know, a couple extra shots on the Colossus from the Colossus really does change how much the rest of the army gets controlled and has to stutter step like I was talking about. So I don't know what happened there, but Jagannatha does provide some AI mishaps. And now, well, the rest of the game went like it did, which wasn't too great for Zoun. He's going to try and once again get in here, but slow Zealots, no blink. One disruptor gets instantly sniped. Second one's going to try and go for a shot, find one Ravager, and that is it. Dark is going to be able to clean this up as well. And behind this, just continuing to build roaches as well as Aspire. And Zoun is still on 2 bases. He tried the build for a second time, hoping that it would go as better or, you know, the same, I guess, as last game, and it just didn't. Dark has this under control.
Yeah, what a fantastic game out of Dark, by the way. Really brilliant control, understanding the situation so well. That he got kind of fooled again. He was like, okay, here we go. I know what this is now. And he realized once those 2 disruptors shot that he could just jump on it. GG gets called, and Dark wins the first series in TSL 7. And the champion stays in Zombie Grub, and for a while it wasn't even really looking like that.
I mean, it was a bit concerning. It wasn't just the exchange of maps, but it was also the fact that, yeah, it seemed like Zoun was starting to get into his head a little bit, still had a couple of tricks up his sleeve, but doing the same trick twice, I mean, I could definitely see all the points that you made. It could be something that just Dark felt deeply uncomfortable against, but I think at that instant that he decided to attack on top of the army, when he did, kind of prove that he was not uncomfortable. He was still good old Dark. He was super confident. Sometimes it's a bad trait. In this case, I think it was a very, very good one. Adapts very easily as well. And as such, he gets to move on in the winner's bracket. And Zoun, well, has to fight his way through the loser's bracket. So he steals a chance. We could see these guys later on, I suppose, and that would be a pretty epic regame. But that is that for the first series of the day. We're going to go to a break, and when we return, we're going to get to our second match of TSL 7.